The words felt less like a conversation and more like a physical blow, delivered with the cold, surgical precision of a lifelong resentment finally given permission to strike. It happened at the most public and inappropriate moment imaginable: the annual mandatory, excruciatingly formal Thanksgiving family dinner at the grand, downtown estate of my grandmother, a dinner where every move was a performance for the entire extended family. My biological sister Claire, who had harbored a barely concealed loathing for me since childhood, pointedly leaned across the linen-covered table, smiled a saccharine, vicious smile, and loud enough for everyone to hear, casually informed me, "You need to go find another table, Ethan. This is the family section, and frankly, you're just taking up space. You know, since you're only adopted." The entire, massive room went silent, the clinking of silverware replaced by a profound, agonizing quiet. But the true unforgivable insult came moments later, right as I was gathering my dignity to leave, when she dropped the meticulously detailed $3.70 bill for the entire family's meal and wine on my plate, adding with a cruel laugh, "You can at least pay for your space, since you don't actually belong here." The insult wasn't just about my adoption, it was about the years of dismissal, the relentless cruelty, and the final, crushing public humiliation that they all, silently, seemed to endorse. What Claire and the rest of my family failed to understand was that the man they had always treated as a burden, the one they mocked for his unstable career, was about to expose a secret of my own. I was, through a meticulously planned financial maneuver they knew nothing about, the quiet, actual owner of the entire estate, the very table she was sitting at, the chair she was mocking me from, the room full of judging relatives. All of it belonged to the adopted son they were so eager to discard, a fact I had legally secured just 2 days before. My revenge wasn't loud, it was the quiet, absolute finality of financial ownership, a move that would ensure their immediate, spectacular downfall. I need to know absolutely, was I wrong for not giving them any chance to beg or apologize, or for waiting until the exact moment of my most profound public humiliation to reveal my ownership, and immediately execute their public, total expulsion from the home they had always claimed? Tell me if you would have waited for a private moment, or if you would have chosen that public, unassailable platform for the final, devastating reckoning. To fully grasp the magnitude of their betrayal and the cold, surgical precision of my counter move, you must first understand the decades of toxic favoritism and the complex, controlling structure of my adoptive family, the Harrisons. My parents, Charles and Eleanor, adopted me, Ethan, when I was a toddler, yet from day one, my existence was a perpetual asterisk next to their biological daughter, Claire. Claire was the golden child, the perfect, blonde-haired daughter who followed every prescribed path: expensive private school, prestigious university, and a traditional, high-status, but ultimately an interesting corporate career. I, however, was the anomaly. I was quiet, deeply artistic, and chose a career path they deemed frivolous and unstable. I became a highly successful, specialized architectural historian and real estate consultant, focusing on appraising and acquiring historical properties, a career where my income, while significant, was discreet and often masked by complex holding companies and trusts, making it invisible to their superficial scrutiny. This disparity fueled Claire's toxic superiority complex, a constant, low-level warfare where my adoption was her favorite weapon, a frequent, cruel reminder that I was not a real Harrison. The financial heart of this entire toxic dynasty was the Harrison estate, a massive, historic, and incredibly valuable downtown property owned outright by my grandmother Martha. Martha was the matriarch, a woman whose will and approval dictated the entire family's social and financial standing. The Harrisons, my parents included, lived their entire lives under the tacit assumption that the estate, upon Martha's inevitable passing, would be divided amongst the true family members, a belief that fed their entitlement and allowed them to treat the property as their own, constantly hosting lavish, expensive events like the Thanksgiving dinner. The entire family, though wealthy in appearance, was financially leveraged and desperately dependent on the eventual sale or inheritance of the estate to maintain their lavish lifestyles. This reliance made them constantly nervous and hyper, focused on proving their worthiness to Martha and my low status. Life as an adopted son was seen as a threat to their collective inheritance, a vulnerable link that Claire was always eager to exploit, a consistent, malicious narrative that slowly poisoned my relationship with the entire family. My entry point, the crack I exploited, was through my work. 6 months ago, my grandmother Martha, who was privately dealing with severe health issues and a rapidly declining memory, quietly approached me. Not Claire, the corporate lawyer, but me, the architectural historian. She wanted to ensure the Harrison estate, which she truly loved, was preserved and protected, not immediately sold off by the greedy, entitled family she saw emerging. Martha knew I, with my specialized knowledge of historical property acquisition and trust law, was the only one capable of truly appreciating and preserving the house's legacy. She entrusted me with a secret. She wanted to sell the estate to me through a carefully constructed, ironclad private sales agreement, a transaction that would secure a massive, immediate, tax-advantaged lump sum for her care, while ensuring the property remained untouched by the family's vultures. The deal was complex, involving me setting up a specialized preservation trust and buying the house at a slightly reduced, but still staggering 8-figure price, a price I had quietly and carefully amassed over years of discreet, successful consulting. This sale would transfer complete legal and non-contestable ownership to my name, all while the family, in their arrogant focus on the future inheritance, remained utterly blind to the immediate legal transfer of ownership. The timing of the Thanksgiving dinner, the scene of Claire's final, cruel insult, was precisely when my meticulously planned financial acquisition reached its final, absolute legal conclusion. The funds had transferred, the deed was recorded, and the property's complete ownership was legally finalized 48 hours before the dinner. I sat at that mahogany table, listening to their snide remarks and enduring their dismissive behavior, fully cognizant that I was not just their relative, but their landlord, the quiet, invisible owner of the very ground beneath their feet. The irony was a cold comfort, a secret weapon I was waiting for the perfect moment to deploy. The bill, the exorbitant, contemptuous 3 Tudor 70 bill that Claire so casually dropped on my plate, a final public act of contempt designed to confirm my status as an outsider and a financial burden, was the key. I had endured the years of dismissal, the months of planning, and the final, crushing insult from the matriarch's favorite granddaughter, and now, the trigger was pulled. The time for quiet, legal maneuvering was over, the time for absolute, public, unassailable retribution had arrived. So that was the situation. My biological sister, Claire, just publicly humiliated me at the annual family Thanksgiving dinner, reminding everyone I was adopted, and then dropping the massive 270 dinner bill on my plate as a final insult. All while sitting in the home that they all believed was their future inheritance. What they didn't know was that I had finalized the non-contestable purchase of the entire estate just 2 days earlier. Before I tell you the specific, absolutely devastating way I used the dinner bill to expose my new ownership and immediately execute their eviction, thereby collapsing the entire family's financial stability and social standing in one silent moment, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have calmly paid the bill and then sent an eviction notice the next day, or would you have chosen the perfect, public arena of the Thanksgiving table to deliver the maximum, career-ending humiliation to Claire and a financial death blow to the entire family? How complete does revenge need to be when you are dealing with 2 decades of emotional cruelty? Let me know your thoughts right now, because the moments that followed were a cold, perfect masterpiece of financial and familial justice that changed my life forever. I didn't reach for my wallet, I didn't even flinch. I let the crumpled, expensive bill sit on my plate next to the discarded remnants of the family's dinner, savoring the profound silence that still gripped the room after Claire's shocking announcement, a silence that was now waiting for my reaction. I looked directly at Claire, who was beaming with cruel satisfaction, and then slowly scanned the faces of my parents and the other relatives, all of whom were either looking down in complicit shame or watching with morbid curiosity, none of them lifting a finger to stop Claire's malicious attack. I picked up the bill, smoothed out the wrinkles, and turned it over to the blank backside. I reached into my coat pocket, not for money, but for the one document that held the full weight of my victory, a document I had deliberately printed on heavy, distinct legal paper. I slid the document, the recorded deed and trust agreement for the Harrison estate, across the table toward Claire, who picked it up with a confused, sneering frown, assuming it was some kind of contract or protest letter. As she began to read the bolded, legal headings, Gerantide Kadhawayanci, Okaba Tresti, the smugness on her face instantly dissolved, replaced by a dawning, terrifying realization. Her eyes flicked frantically between the document's legal language and my face. She gasped a high, strangled sound as she grasped the truth: I owned the house. I let the realization sink in, letting the full horror of the situation wash over her. Then I leaned forward, my voice low, clear, and utterly devoid of emotion, a tone that commanded the attention of every single person in that massive, silent room, delivering the final, crushing blow, using the very bill she had given me as my prop. Claire, I'm not paying your party bill, I stated, picking up a pen and writing 2 lines on the back of the 3 Tudor 70 bill that was resting on my plate, using the bill's paper as my final, legally protected notice. 1. This is now your official 48-hour notice to vacate. The Harrison estate is the property of the Preservation Trust, which I manage. The first month's rent for your parents if they wish to stay beyond the 48-hour eviction period is $12,000 payable in advance. Consider the $3,270 dinner bill your first, partial security deposit for the next month, which I am seizing immediately to cover my time. I then signed the back of the bill with a flourish and slid it back towards her, a perfect, physical symbol of my absolute legal authority and their immediate, total downfall. The chaos was instantaneous and spectacular, a perfect eruption of fear, rage, and profound disbelief. Claire launched herself back from the table, screaming, not in anger, but in a panicked, high-pitched frenzy. "You can't do this! The house is family property! You're adopted!" But the legal document, the irrefutable proof of my ownership and the accelerated foreclosure clause, rendered her hysterics completely meaningless. My father Charles, who was financially dependent on the house as collateral for his business loans, finally found his voice, a pleading, tearful whisper. "Ethan, this is a joke! It's our inheritance! You can't ruin us." But it wasn't a joke, it was a completed transaction. I simply stood up, pushed my chair neatly under the table, and looked at the entire family with cold, absolute finality. "Your grandmother ensured the preservation of this house from financial vultures. The sale is final and legal. My lawyer, Miss Shaw, will be here in an hour to secure the premises. If you are all still here by this time tomorrow, the police will be called for trespassing. The adopted son is leaving. I suggest you all go find another table and another home, because this one is now mine." I walked out of the estate, leaving behind the screaming Claire, the tearful begging parents, and the dozens of stunned relatives who had just witnessed the entire toxic Harrison dynasty implode in a spectacular, public demonstration of financial reckoning, the entire room now a massive, silent tomb of their collective entitlement and their shattered, self-serving world, a scene of total, irreversible destruction that ensured my future was secure. The aftermath was exactly what the entire family feared and exactly what I had designed. The legal process, backed by Martha's ironclad sales agreement, was unassailable. My parents and Claire were immediately forced out of the house, a public, embarrassing removal witnessed by the entire neighborhood, effectively collapsing their entire social standing and financial leverage in one swift blow. My father's business loans were immediately called in by his bank, who saw the loss of the Harrison estate collateral as a massive liability risk, leading to his business's immediate failure and personal bankruptcy. Claire, the corporate lawyer, faced severe professional scrutiny not only for the public spectacle but for her attempt to defraud me of the $3,270, a move that damaged her reputation for integrity and quickly led to her marginalization within her firm. The high-flying career she used to mock me instantly grounded by her own malicious greed and her failure to detect the simple, financial reality of the deed transfer. My grandmother Martha, safe and secure in her new, custom-built assisted living home, paid for by the massive lump sum I provided, later confirmed her complete satisfaction with my actions, expressing her final, official approval of me, the adopted son, as the only true custodian of her legacy. The inheritance they had all fought over was gone, used entirely to pay off Martha's final costs and fund the preservation trust that now owned the house. I had lost a family of convenience but gained financial freedom, professional respect, and the profound, cleansing satisfaction of knowing that the adopted son they had tossed aside had finally definitively bought his way out of their toxic world, ensuring their collective ruin was absolute and unassailable. And so that's the complete, shocking story of how my biological sister told me to go find another table at family dinner because I was adopted and then contemptuously handed me the $3,270 bill, only for me to reveal that I was the new, legal owner of the entire estate, immediately evicting the entire family and bankrupting my father's business in one single, devastating moment. If you stuck with me through this entire unbelievable saga, thank you for letting me share my truth. Like this video if you believe that the quiet, financial purchase and the public, immediate eviction was the only proportional response to decades of emotional cruelty and dismissal, and hit that subscribe button for more true stories where a simple piece of paper delivers the loudest form of justice. Share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section. Do you think the Harrisons will ever truly understand that their greed and entitlement, not my adoption, was the true reason they lost their home? I'll see you all in the next story.